Welcome to the Connection Revolution podcast. I'm so thankful that you're joining us for this episode. This is a unique episode because today our producer is our guest. Our guest is our producer. If you're looking at the two of us on the screen and you're not looking at me, but you're looking at the other guy, you're looking at the guest for today's podcast. This is going to be great. Nate Doom. Nate is with us as always. He's been with us. This is podcast number 14 of the Connection Revolution podcast series. Nate's been with us every time as producer and on camera to help give his perspective on these things as well. Nate, it is absolutely great to have you with us, especially for this podcast.
Yes, it's fun to be the guest finally.
This is awesome. So we've been on this amazing journey. I mean, you're part-time staff with the Sending Project. You're connected with KC Underground, a great ministry here in the Kansas City metro area. You've got a lot of great connections in ministry and churches, and yet God has called you into this amazing journey as a media missionary. And somebody might hear that term and think, what in the world does that mean? Well, we're going to hear about that. You're going to help us be educated about that today. I'm looking forward to that. And then it's also led to something that's called Bannered Studios. So we're going to hear about that. So those of you tuning into this podcast, you do not want to miss this, because this is I think I don't know. To me, anyway, it seems like a bit of a trailblazing, a bit of a pioneering kind of a thing that God's doing through Nate, and we are so blessed to be journeying with him with the Sending Project and the work he's doing with these podcasts and other work with the Sending Project. But absolutely also blessed to be journeying with him in this ministry journey, this ministry partnership journey, if you will, related to Bannered Studios. And it's an exciting thing. So Nate, it has been such a blessing to have met you a few years ago. Then a great Connection Revolution story. God reconnected us. Maybe what was it, about a year ago or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Something
so.
like that. And here we are, just really kind of in the trenches of ministry together. It's a blessing. And I'd love to start out just by asking you to tell a little bit of an introduction about yourself and how your journey with the Lord began and what that's like.
Yeah, so from Michigan originally, it moved here about to KC about 7 years ago, and through a series of just different God orchestrated moments in my life, God led me to this place of where all my passions, my experience, and my giftings all kind of came together and aligned in this kind of dream he gave me to see what it would be like to be a media missionary. And a lot of that in the past 7 years in KC has been the development of the giftings and the experience in working where I was first working when I met you is for this social media app startup company that you guys were using.
Yeah.
And so there was already the seeds of what I'm doing now were planted there with the media side of things. And then he's just given me a lot of opportunities to develop the giftings and put language to my passions about creativity and seeing people connect with God through their creativity and the gospel. And him as a creator, we're all, I think, capable of being creative, and so that's always been passion and part of my passion. And so it all kind of came together with this idea of a studio, starting a studio. And so I'll talk a little bit about the why I'm doing what I'm doing, and then the studio is kind of the how. And so they're kind of two big buckets that I have a lot to say on. But yeah, that's a little bit about how I got to where I'm at.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, you're a talented guy. I mean, you're a very talented guy. You've helped us with video production, other, things, website development stuff and improvements, different things. And you're a talented guy. You could be making a lot of money out there, working somewhere. And yet you're being obedient to the calling God's put in your life, and you're stepping into this role as a media missionary. Okay. So Media missionary. We know missionaries not all the time, but sometimes need to raise funds. So that's another thing you're working. It's a step of faith in that regard. But tell us a little bit about, or whatever you want to say, really, about this calling about being a media missionary, because that's a term maybe a lot of people haven't heard before.
Yeah, and it's a term that I thought of on my own, but I wouldn't say I came up with it because I'm sure it's used other places. It's kind of like a
Mm,
obvious thing hanging out there in the air, and it's just
mm.
like, me, it makes sense, but
Yeah,
it isn't necessarily commonplace
yeah,
or has a specific connotation in the way you would for someone that you maybe would say a international missionary. They're maybe a missionary to China, so they're
yeah.
that has a specific, okay, when you think of that, I know what that looks like pretty much, even if I haven't done that. People in the church have had an understanding. And so,
Hmm.
first, a lot of started with just like the idea of that making sense on some level, but then not what does that actually look like? And I'd say that's where my kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing started to really develop, and it still is developing. I'm still fleshing out some ideas of how that can practically look, and I'll talk more about the how um that I feel called to when it relates to as it relates to Banner Studios, but I've realized there's a lot to the why and the current meaning of what it could mean to be a media missionary, because I
Mm,
realized more recently there is a specific connotation when you say Christian media, though.
hmm.
You can say Christian media and you think of things like maybe Veggie Tales or The Chosen, or the movies by the studio that made Fireproof, or some of those Facing the Giants. Those kind of were popular back in the day, and so it's kind of media that we understand, movies, TV, that space, um but Christian version, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But when I say media missions, or to be a media missionary, I've realized that it's actually really important to make a distinction between um, Christian media and media missions. And what I
Hmm.
really feel like differentiates media missions is it's not just going into that space to be competitive in that space and represent the church and Christian culture, but
Hmm.
it's actually looking at media as a landscape where people live out part of their lives now. And even
Hmm.
that element, it's only in the maybe last 15 years to be as significant as it is,
Right.
especially amongst young people, is with smartphones and the way the internet has, videos online are tailored to the specific person that watches them on their account, and social media uh,
Hmm.
with apps like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. That's even more recent, and that has created a trend that never existed before, which is people are actually living out part of their lives in the space of media. And so what does it look like to live on mission to that landscape with a strategy to actually draw people away from the things that are dark in that place? And what language do they speak in that landscape? Just like you would say, if you were going to be a missionary to China, you have,
Hmm.
you need to translate the gospel, but there's also, you might think, okay, just translate it to Chinese, but if you learn more about China, they speak
Yeah.
Mandarin there, but they also speak Cantonese. And then there's also subcultures of people that speak a different dialect. And so it gets, you need to have an informed idea to be able to wisely strategize to reach people. And you're reaching them not just to represent the church, or in terms of an organization and try to be relevant, but you're not trying to inform necessarily their opinion of you. You're trying to actually draw people out of darkness with
Hmm.
the truth of the gospel and the power of the gospel.
Yeah.
uh, and it's different than competing. It's different than putting a Christian coat of paint on something. It's there's a mission to be done. There's a target, and going to do it with. We're going to be wise as serpent and as wise as serpents and soft as doves. The way that Paul was with the people in Athens and Rome, and he spoke in a way that they can understand. Jesus too, he spoke in parables that often were farming, parables because that's what people did back then. So it's a different, I feel like there's a different kind of
Mm.
approach you could have than what the church has had. Um, there's definitely a need. And
Yeah,
that's basically my why is, do we need media missionaries in the
yeah.
world? And
That's
I feel like
really,
yes.
really, yes, really great and interesting. So interesting and so thankful that you're saying yes to this calling God's put on your life, even though we know what that's like. In the early stages are not always just crystal clear about what the next year or two is going to look like, even, and yet you're stepping into it, and it's just been a blessing to be journeying with you at this early stage of this. And we're very for you and what God is calling you to do. So thank you for saying yes, and thank you for just staying on that journey. Now, this journey of you saying yes to being a media missionary and what this relates to has also led to something called Bannerd Studios. Tell us about that, what that
Yes, so
is.
I'd say Banner Studios is the how where I'm at right now. So I think the world needs a lot more media missionaries because of these reasons that I just said, and needs more than me and what I could do. But I
Mhm.
also feel like I should be one. If I'm gonna point it out, call people to be it, I should be one too. So Banner Studios is the how, is the vehicle which I feel called to start this journey in myself, walking myself, um, in collaboration with other ministries as God orchestrates. But Bannerd Studios simply is a studio that can create a studio. I guess I'll use an example. I'm I hesitate to just say it's going to be just like this because it's going to be different. But the easiest way to kind of describe it is similar to the Bible Project, a nonprofit animation studio.
Mm,
And the reason I feel called to start with that is it's part of my background is in illustration and animation, and it's a powerful tool to communicate very simply, and it can be placed in media, and you can do a lot with a little because of animation. And there's just certain ways that the experience I've had and the giftings I've had have kind of aligned for me to being able to make animations and create content that I can put online, that can start reaching people. And so
mm,
uh, yeah, the methodology and all the different ways that's going to kind of branch out is still developing, but I do know that making the first step is establishing some kind of actual presence in the space, actually being able uh to step up, put a foot in the door, I guess you could say. If you don't go to the space, you can't draw people out of it. So how to be a light in the space of media, I'd say that's where it does get more similar to Christian media. I do think you've seen things start to do that
mm,
that are like The Chosen,
mhm,
or the Bible Project. They're things that the entire body of Christ can use, um, to reach people with the gospel. And I guess one specific example I'll give for how it relates to the uniqueness of the media landscape and how you can kind of leverage what are some of the trends of that space is I'd like to make videos that would be a series of videos that is called the gospel for blank. So you
mm,
could take the gospel for, let's say, engineers, and
mm,
you could make a video and you translate it in the same way you would translate the gospel to reach a certain people group in a foreign nation that speak that language. What would
mm,
it look like to translate the gospel for engineers, or to translate the gospel for painters, or to translate the gospel for surfers, or any sort of thing. And so That's what people in the media landscape are used to. It goes a long way for people to feel like you actually are in touch with um what they're used to. And so I would say the big a big issue with media is that people are very used to connecting with only things they're personally interested in because that's kind of what they're being fed on their screen.
Mm,
So that's what's changed also versus when there was just TV back in the day. Everyone watched the same channel. It wasn't custom for you. So now people are used to custom tailored things that they're more likely to see things they connect to and relate to on the screen than in their daily life. And so there's a very compelling reason to be on this device or the screen because you're way more likely to see stuff you actually relate to and connect with because it's being tailored by an algorithm to your interests.
mm,
And
yeah.
so this is more of where we get into the how of is there a way to do the media side of things where it's still maybe Christian media or um however you want to frame it, uh but it's using some of the knowledge of how the landscape works to actually draw people to the gospel. And then if you have them, okay, they're connecting with the gospel in a way that they never did before, because it's put in their language as an engineer. But then they might be a believer and they watch the gospel for painters, and they're not a painter, but they know the gospel. So then it starts to work the reverse way, which is the
Mm,
goal is that people who do resonate with the gospel can even if they feel like they can't relate with someone on these other levels, we can relate with each other and that we're all part of the body of Christ. And
amen.
so that's just some of the stuff you can do in that space. Um, and it's really believing that the gospel is the one true narrative um that really we're all looking to be a part of. And so it's just believing that people want that and need that and putting it out there to do its work. And
Mm,
uh,
yeah.
it's a big, it's a difference between, if you can't beat them, join them, which is sometimes what the church I think has been tempted to do in the media space, or if you can't beat them, just leave them alone. But
Mm,
it's really doubling down on like, no, we can beat them. We have the goods, we have the truth, and so we just need uh, to double down on believing that.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's there's a lot of work to be done in the how side because I'm
Yeah.
just talking about one sliver of one technique of one thing that I
Right.
feel called to. And so that's why
Yeah.
I'm really trying to pursue this to be able to spend um, more time developing this, not just on my own with my own ideas, but with the body of Christ. And so that's why the why really is essential first for people to
Hmm.
to understand there's a need here uh, and I can't do it on my own, and I wouldn't want to either. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Nate. This coming May 9th, very, very soon in the future here, just a short distance away. Um, we're having a luncheon, and I'm so glad, so thankful that we're able to do this in partnership with you and Banner Studios. So Sending Projects facilitating this. We'll get the word out. We'll get an event page added on the Sending Project website. But this luncheon, I want you to tell us more about it, or what's on your heart for that luncheon. My heart for it is that it could help build awareness about what you're doing, that people would be interested, people would show up, maybe to learn more about what you're doing in this calling of being a media missionary, and also about Banner Studios, and be interested and even willing to pray for you, maybe be involved in somehow to help, even provide financial support, be a part of your support team. I know you're raising support. So I just kind of say all that to kind of do a general intro into this, but tell us what's on your heart and your mind. It's May 9th, 11:45 a.m. If it's not on the website, Sending Project website, it'll be there soon. But Westbrook Church, 9777 Antioch Road, in Overland Park. So what's on your heart about this, Nate, this luncheon on May 9th?
yeah, I think just getting an awareness of, this is what's on my heart. This is what I feel called to do about it. And would you help? Do you see the need for media missionaries? Um, and if so, would you help in these few ways, and sharing a little bit even about some of the ways to help, and a big component too about this, drawing people out of this, is ultimately it's getting people plugged into communities and discipleship, and that's offline, out of media and stuff. And so that's an area where
Mm.
I want to, all the help we can get to actually have, resources for people to be plugged into discipleship. And um, there's as I, connect with more ministry leaders and connecting with you guys, the Sending Project,
Mm.
um, and KC Underground is also, a ministry you mentioned working with.
Yeah.
So might hear something from someone from that side of things too. There's just, yeah, there's a need for resources and help, and so it's and just feedback too. So
Sure.
it'll be sharing some of that, and then it'll be potentially me sharing some of the stuff I've worked on, some demos.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of, this is what I'm capable of right now as a one-man person, team. This is where I'm at. This is what I have, and I'm gonna go forward. And I'd like all the help I can get, and
Yeah.
encouragement, and to be a blessing as well. And so here I am. That's the basic idea as I go move into kind of being launched in the summer is the big goal. I mean, I'm gonna do it, with whatever's in my hands at that time. I'm
Yeah.
gonna move forward in it. So I'm just, you know
Yeah.
uh might as well announce it now. you know
That's right. Let people know, see who shows up. I just want to encourage those of you listening and watching this podcast episode to really consider being there on May 9th for that luncheon. It's going to be a great time. Hear from Nate. Uh, you'll learn some things and you'll be encouraged, but also be there to consider how you could come alongside of Nate to help this happen, help this journey continue stronger and stronger. Uh, think about prayer and financial resources and what God might be putting in your heart to be do to be a part of his team. Because like he said, he's going to keep going, but the stronger the team is that's around him, the better this is going to be. And so yeah, we just encourage you to be there May 9th. You can go to the Sending Project website to find out more. Like I said, if it's not on there yet, it will be soon. Look on the events calendar listings; it'll be there if it's not there yet. So Nate, kind of funny because usually toward the end of the podcast, I say, okay, we're going to take a little moment here and hear from Nate about things that have been said. But I don't know if I have to do that today because you've been the one saying these things. And this has been, I do want to emphasize the next generation aspect of this because a lot of times we kind of have now officially, I guess, established the millennial moment where I ask you to comment on things that have been being said. This is more than just a millennial moment. This whole podcast is about you, Nate, and your journey with Banner Studios and being a media missionary. And so that's very much related to the next generation because of what you're doing and who you are as a millennial. And so I'm thankful for this as it relates to the next generation too, because our hearts really are for the next generation and what God will do to reach them and minister to them. And certainly what you're doing and your calling is right there in the middle of that whole conversation as well. So I'm very thankful for it and for that reason too. As we wrap it up, Nate, when you think about a year or two down the road, if you were just, I know it's a tough question to answer, but maybe not, but you're going to say, what do you hope for as a result of your efforts with this and stepping into this calling, maybe a year or two down the road? How would you describe, wow, this has been a very successful year or two? What is Media Missionary, Nate Doom, and Banner Studios about, and what does it look like then?
I think I have a little card of my Banner Studios card, and the little tagline says "Making Media Missionaries Commonplace." And
Mm.
so having it just be a bit more understood what that means, I think that would be a big success is you could say media missionary and people would have an idea in their head of what that looks like. Um, Hopefully I'll have a better idea of what that looks like, and a much better idea, but I think there's a start, and I feel like God's given me not the whole picture, but he's given me a next step with the
Mhm.
house, some of the house, and that's going to be the next few years is going to be step after step.
Yeah.
Just like, the word is line upon line, precept upon precept, we
Mm.
and these are steps of faith. And so I think I'll be a little further down the road, and
Yeah.
hopefully some other people will be a little further down the road with me. So
Yeah. Amen. That's a great answer. And yeah, I believe it. It's going to happen. It's going to keep going and growing as God blesses and guides and leads and provides. And so thank you. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you so
you
much. And for all that you're about with all of this stuff you've been talking about. Thank you again for saying yes to God's calling in your life. And if somebody's out there, they've heard this podcast and or part of it or all of it, and they want to contact you, they want to learn more, take a next step. We know we talked about the event coming up, but aside from the event, what would you offer as any contact information, next step they could learn more about you and maybe connect with you and Banner Studios?
for sure. Yeah, if you go to my website, bannerdstudios.com, BANNERED, bannerdstudios.com. That has a link to kind of all my info right now, some demos of some of the animation stuff, some just information about my heart behind some of the things, and then there's a contact button in the upper right that you can send me an email through, directly through there, or you can just do Nathaniel, NATHANIEL Doom at gmail.com. Send me an email too, works. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Some great options. Nate, thank you again. And look forward to next podcast we get to do together. It's been a blast already. This is our 14th, and Lord willing, hopefully many more in the future.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, you're welcome, and it's a blessing to those of you listening, watching to this Connection Revolution podcast. So thankful you taking the time to join us, and we look forward to when you're back with us next time as the Connection Revolution continues.